Thank you for all those beautiful words and your incredible mission. There is so much to talk about, and we're honored to be here at the opening of this session. So before we get started, I'd love to introduce our esteemed panelists, starting with Kate.
It's an incredible opportunity, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. My name is Kate MacNevin. I'm the Worldwide Chief Operating Officer of McCann Worldgroup, and I double hat as the Chairman and CEO of MRM, which is one of the agencies of McCann Worldgroup. So thrilled to be here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here, World Women Forum, as well as to my co-panelists. I'm excited to be here today, and to you attendees for being here so early on the middle of Cannes Week. My name is Pat Ratulangi. I'm with Nielsen, and I run D&I communications globally, but I also double hat as our Asian thought leader. Hello.
Hello, honored to be here as well. I'm Fabiana Schaeffer, and I'm with Netza. It's a Brazilian agency. We were only an agency, but it's an independent agency. 24 years ago, we launched this, and 10 years ago, we did also double-headed a nonprofit inside the agency. I'm going to talk about more later. Okay, but glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Good morning. It's fantastic to be here, and I know I'm going to be super inspired by the end of all of this, and energized. My name is Annemarie, and I'm the Executive Director for the UN Office for Partnerships, and I'm ready for the conversation.
Excellent. And I'm Barby Siegel. As Rupa said, I'm Global CEO of Zeno Group, and really passionate about this topic. Rupa mentioned lack of capital for women, and Zeno made a first-of-its-kind investment in a female-founded, Black-owned business about 3 years ago. We talk about that as agency allyship, so I think that is relevant to this discussion, but I'm going to moderate all of you fantastic women, and we're talking about creativity as a driver for social change. But today, we also want to talk about women in leadership positions so they can make that change. And it's early in the morning, so just get the juices going. I'm going to share 3 data points that I hope will just get everybody out of their chairs and being part of this wonderful organization. First is that 12% of creative directors globally are women, and I'm sure Kate will have something to say about that. According to the Gina David Institute, in 96 years of the Oscars, only 3 female directors have won an Oscar. That really should give us all some pause. And finally, there is not one woman CEO of any of the 6 major holding companies, and that as reported by Forbes in 2023. And I see Kate smiling, so of course she's going to get, I'm going to ask all of you the first sort of table-setting question, if you will. So here we are in 2024. The world is moving very fast on many fronts, but we're still talking about this topic. So what are the barriers to advance women into these leadership positions so we can be agents of change, which I'd like to say we all are, but we need more women doing that. So Kate, what is your perspective?
I think, it is, the statistics are staggering, and I think we're going backwards and not forwards, and that is scary when I hear those numbers. I think, the key barrier, I think, is that for too long, it has been cyclical discussion. It's not embedded in our cultures, our processes, their programs. We will leave Cannes after these conversations with intent to make change, and then our day-to-day lives, the pressure of financials and client deliverables and everything, our families and life gets in the way of making sustainable, meaningful, impactful change. And so I think the call to everybody is, what do we need to do collectively, men and women, everybody, to make it part of the conversation every day? It cannot be a program. It cannot be a process. It needs to be so much more. And I think we need to put it back at the top of the agenda, frankly, in all of our our spaces in all of what we do.
I think some people may think we've solved the problem.
We haven't.
And
We
that
haven't.
is common to some of our other social issues as well. It sort of falls off the radar and people move on to other things.
Exactly.
Patricia, what's your view?
So props to you, Kate, for recognizing that. And that's very true. The data is proof that we have a long ways to go. And our perspective is that, at Nielsen at least, is that there is a history of not being able to hire in the appropriate way. In order to bring more women up the ranks, into the ranks to begin with, you need to hire for potential, not proof. Because if there isn't enough women in the pipeline, there's not going to be proof of women in that pipeline, right? So I would encourage that, everybody here, especially the men who are in those hiring roles today, to take a second look and consider potential, not proof, wherever you go.
Yeah, I would say, I would add to that I really agree with all of that, but I would say that culture is really important. We see a lot of difference between the North and South part of the world regarding culture, and it cannot be one size fits all solution. It needs to go in deeply into each one of the cultures for us to understand how can we make the change. Because otherwise we keep on talking like if it's something that's really like there's an equation easy to follow, but it's not.
And I think it's also, we've seen in the last number of years, probably since the pandemic, a lot of women dropping out of the workforce. So
Exactly.
to the pipeline, less women, and maybe women are somehow afraid of what that path is and can they manage with so many other demands, as you said, family and so forth. So the more we can model what is possible, especially with technology, I think
Exactly.
that's important too.
Exactly.
Annemarie?
So I have a quote here, and however long that it's taken, it's still going to take time, but it doesn't mean we can stop at all. And so the Secretary General, who we call our feminist in chief, when he came into his position, he wanted to see parity in the leadership of the UN. And within 3 years, we've reached parity in our senior leadership. So I think it's just like maybe 51% women leaders, which is really fantastic considering where we were. But he said today, when I look at the world today, I see that those with the most power are showing the least leadership, and those who are demonstrating leadership have little power. And I think we need to shift and flip that paradigm, and so that people who are in leadership positions also have the power to continue to make change.
Love that quote. Okay, now I'll go to each of you with your own question. Kate. Wow, congratulations. You're at the top of the organization. Very, very inspiring. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what has that enabled you to do, or frankly, not do, to be an agent of change? Once you arrive there, is it, okay, now I can truly change the world, or are there other barriers that you have encountered?
Yeah, so listen, I've had an incredible opportunity at IPG and at McCann Worldgroup that has afforded me to have the position I now have. And I will tell you, my journey was, and I talk about this all the time, I say it's the path less traveled. Every single time in my career, there was an opportunity, a fork in the road, had to make a decision. I always took the path that was least expected. I had an incredible mentor for most of my career who, it was a man. And many years ago, he must have seen something in myself that I did not see in myself. He saw something in me that I could not see. And I got to a point in my career where I was offered a position in automotive. And at the time, there were very few, if any, women in automotive at the table. And I spoke to him, and he said to me, and I use this quote all the time, you must do it. Because I said, I don't know if I can do this. I was fear. It's fear of failure, fear of being found out, that imposter syndrome that most of us live with. And he said, you can do it and you must do it. And that has stayed with me in terms of being on automotive, being the only woman at the table and having the confidence to do that. And every single moment in that fork in the road, I have that memory of him saying, you must do it. You must break new barriers. You must be the one, has stayed with me. So now in my role over the last, several years, not only as CEO and COO, I really feel like my role is, in many ways, the one to be the change agent, the one to put things on the table that maybe others are not ready to put on the table. When I became the CEO of MRM, the first thing I did was say, well, what is our, sounds incredible, DE&I agenda? And we didn't have one. And so I said, well, we are going to write one, and we are going to put it out there. And we developed our DE&I blueprint, and we published it to our clients, to our employees, and it caused friction, frankly, in our organization, like, what's she doing? And, again, my mentor said, you put a female in this role and she is going to challenge us. She is going to do things that others would not, because she has a different perspective. And I really believe that's my role. And now I think as a role as CEO and COO, and yes, we all have day things that we have to do. There's, programs that have to be rolled out and stuff, clients and stuff. But I think my role is to champion making sure that women are represented at the table, that my job is to give those women confidence and to push men in our organization. Those statistics around holding companies is awful. It's tragic, around creative. And my job, I really believe my job at this point in my career is to make sure that I leave the industry in a better position than when I found it. And so I have to challenge, I have to push, and make sure that men are involved in this conversation. They have to be the ones who are championing women to get to the top.
I don't know if this is, oh yeah, okay. Kate, that is really inspiring. I too have had a male mentor and champion, and I think those stories need to get out more. Just as one follow-up, and then I'll get to everyone else. Interesting about what he said to you when you were younger, you have to go for it, you have to do it. What do you see in the women, the younger women in your organization today? Are they fearful in that way? Do they have that imposter syndrome? What's sort of their ambition?
Yeah, there's a really staggering statistic I was reading. So I think you guys are all very familiar with L'Oreal and their platform, You're Worth It. There is a statistic that led to a campaign that's currently out there that 81% of women are afraid of failure and feel more fear of failure than men. And 85% of women will not ask, or waiting for them all of their skills before they ask for a promotion. 85% versus 40% from women, for men, right? So that's from KPMG, right? So we wait until we think we're ready. And so I really think we have to say that women are afraid of fear. When you have 80% of women afraid of fear and of failure, we have to change that. We have to embrace fear and fail.
All a fearless bracelet?
You absolutely do. But that tells you that's a big number. And so I think it's, how do we as a society, how do we as an industry say to women, it's okay to fail. You should not be afraid to fail. I know I make 100 mistakes every day, and I fear every day, but I think we have to give these young women the confidence to fail, and to fail fast, and that's okay.
That could be a whole other panel, Rupa, coming up at another time on failure and being fearless and all of that. Patricia, let's go to you. So you've been at Nielsen for the better part of a decade. I'd love to compare and contrast your experience now with Kate. So what changes have you seen? What have you been able to implement for greater representation and engagement in terms of the media industry?
So pretty much similar in terms of having a mentor who really believed in me. She was a woman, and I came up in the communications function within Nielsen, and it was always focused on internal or external communications and PR. And honestly, if you had told me that I would be sitting here speaking to people in front of you all, I'd be, no, can't do that. Massive imposter syndrome. And it was Laura, who just passed away from cancer a couple of years ago, unfortunately. She was the one who said, hey, this is an opportunity to talk the talk of how you've been talking about how Asian women in particular have to come up stronger, better in media, in our function as well. And she gave me that belief that, hey, you know what? If I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it? It took then a few more years and a lot of self-reflection, a lot of coaching to realize that I could become that person that she saw the potential in me to become. And 4 years into this role now, I am part of the D&I organization who just evolved our name to Business Inclusion, Impact, and Belonging. And we got a lot of questions from the organization. I think many of you may be familiar that, especially in the US, diversity, equity, and inclusion has been facing massive backlash. Everybody's saying these are just buzzwords. It's wokeism, right? It's just here to stay because of what happened with George Floyd, and now it's going to go away. But you know what? There is a very strong bottom line. The stats are out there too, that when you have a more diverse workforce, a more diverse creative force, right? Women, people of color see things differently and can engage and resonate with the different people out there. And hey, there's going to be a majority minority in the next decade, if not sooner, in certain countries. And you have to be able to talk to those people. And unless you have people who have those lived experiences, to your point about culture, you can't create campaigns, you can't create stories, you can't share those experiences to be able to build up work that actually makes a difference and contributes to the bottom line. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We have to make money for the businesses we're engaged with.
At Nielsen, what is the percentage broadly of women in leadership positions? What's the makeup of the leadership team?
So when we were public, it was 50-50 because when our CEO at the time, David Kenny, came on for 1 year, he actually became both CEO and Chief Diversity Officer because he saw how bad it was. We're now private equity owned and it's shifted some, but we're trying to do our best to right that ship again.
That's so interesting. A CEO also as the Chief Diversity Officer. I'm not sure that's something you see very often.
No,
Right.
it was really amazing, and he really believed in it, and to the point of having men as allies, right? And we can't do it by ourselves. It takes all of us leaning into it and supporting it.
That really is a double whammy. It's not only the CEO, a male CEO championing it, but he himself doing the hard work. So, okay, we're going to move to Fabiana. So tell us about the innovative strategies that you either have or you plan to implement for greater bringing women into more positions, but also as change makers.
Of course. Well, on the other hand, I myself, I was very confident that I could do it. Being, I had very nice and strong women at home, grandmother, my mother, and theirs came from to Brazil from war. My grandmother was got divorced. I don't know when, and there was no divorce in Brazil. And she was an artist, and she fought for herself. So I had this in me, and so I didn't have any imposter syndrome.
Fear.
No fear at all. And especially in Brazil, that is a very male country. But I really didn't have any afraid. I was not afraid at all. But I know that was lucky because I know there's a lot of women, especially in the north part of Brazil, that has no access to it. So it was very lucky. And 24 years in the industry, I see that being also the owner of the company That's different because when you are in the industry, but it's not a role. You need to perform. It's either you or no one. You cannot leave it, otherwise you close the company. But being more than 24 years in this role, I and 10 years from now, 10 years ago, I thought, well, this is not going to, only making campaigns for clients will not do. So I joined the UN Global Compound Brazil. It was, and learned about, a lot about them and with them. And we thought more about having creativity as a positive impact. So we choose the clients we're going to work for. If they're not in the same path, they're not good for us. And what we're doing in Brazil, like strategies, goes to different paths. So first in 2020, we formed with a lot of companies a coalition, a business coalition for fighting violence against against women and girls. Now we are 130 companies doing that, fighting violence. I have some numbers here I can share with you. Every 24 hours, at least 8 women are victims of violence in Brazil. 81% of Brazilian women do not search for assistance after a rape. So it's really important for us inside organizations to fight for it, to say that it's not okay. And so we've been doing this through communications. So this is how communication can help in terms of violence. I think it's a common problem that we all in the whole world, unfortunately, we face. And I think we together can change that. We need to change that. I don't want my grandkids to ever understand what I'm fighting this for. I want them to say, I don't know what my grandma did, talking about equality. I don't want this to be a problem in the future. So I have a role to play in this now. Also, we do a lot of things in the Amazon. So people say, oh, Amazon is good. We have to preserve it, climate change, etc. But we have a lot of women's there that are doing a very nice job, and they don't. And with the NGO that we support there is an NGO, 7 women, and they transform the garbage of the jungle in art, and they sell it in the south part. So it's really nice work. Besides of planting trees, that are being doing that, and as a strategy we support to show that it's different types of things that we can do in order to change it.
Those are incredible examples, and I think it goes to show it takes all types of businesses to make change, and the power of being an entrepreneur and being able to take on is probably a little bit different than what Kate can do in a big publicly held company, but there's something for each of us. So that's really, congratulations on all of that. Now to Annemarie, I know you have some new research you'd like to share. We'd like to all hear a little bit more about the UN Office of Partnerships and how that is helping to advance women in leadership, but also tackle some of these pressing issues.
Thanks so much. It's exciting to hear. I love the take the path that's unexpected. And I heard another really great quote around friction, not to be fearful of friction because friction is what gives us energy. And I think these kinds of things are the things that are going to stay with me and keep me going. It was in Davos that I was on a stage here, and we were talking, and we got such great feedback about this idea. The UN is about to turn 80 next year, and this year we're going to host in September the Summit of the Future, which is really about shaping what comes next on the digital agenda, the peace agenda, and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which many of you may know about. What was really interesting is that when the Charter of the UN was created almost 80 years ago, only 4 women signed it. So it starts with these 3 magical words, we the peoples. But it was really about we the men back then. And so we thought it was high time to say, what if it started with we the women? This is the perfect time to ask women, what are their priorities? And we got such great feedback from everyone, and we really tapped into the network, Rupa's network, and we heard from 25,000 women in 185 countries, and it was amazing. So we had these volunteers going out, and one young woman in Syria, she said, you know what, I want to make sure women who are displaced are heard. They don't have internet access at the moment, so I'm just going to go in and talk to women and take down their answers and input it for them in order to make sure that everyone is heard. So some of the results, maybe on the Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17 of them. The first 2 might not surprise you. It was around health and education. That kind of makes sense. But the third one was Goal 16. I mean, how many people know Goal 16? It is really far down, and it's one that doesn't get talked about, but it's about peace, justice, and strong institutions. So really, women are looking for justice, and they really, really feel it's important. When we asked them what were the things that are going to impact them 10 years into the future, it was climate and conflict. Those are the 2 things that came to the top of the list. Mental health. Mental health was one of the issues. 46% of women said that mental health is a barrier to them reaching their full potential. So a lot of gloom and doom, but out of all of the gloom and doom of this, women are super optimistic. More than 60% say they're going to be better off in 5 years, and they're going to be better represented. And that I love is this, we're seeing representation here in every sector, whether it be politics and government and in businesses. And so what this tells us is that there are expectations, and world leaders, CEOs, they need to know that women, as a very large audience, as we all know, have expectations of their leaders to do the right thing and to focus on the issues and not to stop until we're there. And right now, in a very polarized, very geopolitical world, there's going to be, 60% of the world is going through elections. It's a chance for everyone to exercise their voice in one way and to find out the information and make their choices and to be heard.
That research is so enlightening. Where could we all find that research online? Is that public?
Yeah, so it's part of a program that the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, who's the highest ranking woman in the UN and happens to be my boss, we have a website, and we're going to share it with everyone here. And the data is just so interesting. The fact that we heard from 185 countries is pretty incredible. And the fact that it was really balanced between women who are over 35 and under 35. And that they care about a lot of the same things, and the way they come across it might be a little bit different. And that means a lot of what we're talking about, how we communicate, how we engage, how we change culture, how we do all of these things is as we get more information and data, we're strong believers that the people who have the data have the narrative. And the narrative is so strong, and the storytelling is so strong, and we have such an incredible story to tell.
Thank you. And one of the things I've loved about this conversation is that each of you come from a different place, but there have been so many threads that work together. I especially appreciate your mentioning mental health, because I do think, Kate, when we talk about women coming up and not being afraid, I think mental health is a really big part of it today. So I've been giving the sign that we only have now probably a couple of minutes. So last question. You know, we're all going to have a wonderful week here. It's very inspiring, a notebook filled with notes, and we're going to get back to our desk on Monday morning and get back to it. What is the one piece of advice you have for everybody here on how we, starting on Monday, can be even greater champions of change?
I'll start. So I will say, I think having the conversation is half the battle, right? And having open, honest conversations. So I think the challenge for all of us is to get back and start to talk to our leaders people who have, have ability to impact, and start opening up the conversation again and just making it part of our everyday. It starts with a conversation.
I think we can all do that. Patricia?
So I believe in measurement. And for us here in the ad industry, we have to measure the power of inclusivity in the advertising, the programming that we're putting that advertising on. So for women's programming, we're able to track content and seeing what the percentage or share of cast is in the top most watched programs. And what we saw was that 2.4% of ad spend today is going to programs where women are 50% have that 50% share of cast, which means that there is a gap in how advertisers can invest in programs where women are portrayed and in a different multiplicity of roles out there. So that is definitely one area that I do see as something that we can all go to our clients to investigate. And we do have a report out there that examines how this ad spend in inclusive content has the power to impact.
Great. Fabiana?
Well, I don't know. Oh, yeah. I, well, I think we have to understand that it's a road, it's a bumpy road, but we have to follow this road. And I heard from that little, but huge girl over there that it's not about age, it's about attitude, right? So, yeah, I think she's right. And we have to go back and understand that each one of us can change our own environment. It doesn't have to be the whole world is big. So we have to start with our own companies, our own house, and that is going to amplify. We can amplify, and then that's how to needs to begin communication, embracing, giving courage, embrace your team. So I think that's things that we can do on Monday early morning.
Annemarie?
So in the history of the UN, we've never had a female Secretary General. I'd love for us to start really sensitizing everyone to that idea. That would be amazing. We have 3 years, about 3 years, so let's get that done. And I'd love to leave everyone with a quote. Gender equality is a question of power, and power is never given, it's taken. And so take up the space, take at the table, and bring someone maybe younger to that table with you.
All great pieces of advice. And I guess the last thing I would say from my point of view is to surround yourself with other like-minded people who believe in what you believe in. I mean, you all have been so inspiring, and I hope we can work together on something going forward. And that goes for men and women. Sort of find your people and go forward together. So again, Rupa, I'm getting the 5-minute sign for the last 10 minutes, so we're probably over, but thank you. I don't know where you are, but thank you so much for the honor of opening today's session. And I hope everybody leaves inspired and ready to be agents of change.